Escort her off this yacht. She doesn't belong here. The command cracked across the luxury deck like glass shattering. Isabella Marlowe didn't whisper. She wanted every guest to hear it. Her crimson sequin gown blazed under the Miami sunset, her diamond necklace catching the light as if power itself could sparkle. Laughter died. The jazz band froze mid-note. 200 heads turned toward one woman in emerald silk. Ava Johnson didn't flinch. 29, young, beautiful, wrapped in a gown that whispered elegance without shouting for attention. She held her wine glass loosely, as if the weight of Isabella's words was nothing at all. But in her chest, a familiar ache pressed forward the same tone she'd heard at 23 in a hotel lobby, at 26 in a boardroom, now again at 29 on her own yacht. Breathless, same dismissal. Before we continue, where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. And if you believe in dignity and justice, hit like and subscribe. These stories spark change. And we're glad you're here. Now, back to Ava. The scene should have been perfect. Biscayne Bay glowing gold, champagne flutes raised, polished teak deck shining under lantern light. But perfection cracked with that single sentence. Isabella raised her chin higher, her voice loud enough to echo, "This gala is for real guests, not imposters in green silk." A hush swept the crowd. Some guests smirked, amused by the cruelty. Others whispered uneasily, shifting in their seats. The security guard at Isabella's side stepped forward, muscles tense. Ava set her glass gently on the nearest table. No rush, no panic. Her shoulders straightened, her eyes dark, steady lifted to meet Isabella's eye. Are you sure?" Ava asked softly, almost tender. "That you want to do this here?" That question didn't land like a plea. It landed like a blade. The warmth of the evening twisted. The golden deck felt charged, as if the bay itself held its breath. From the corner, Sofia Ramirez, a vlogger in a pastel dress, whispered into her phone. "This doesn't feel right. This is going to explode." But Isabella only smirked, waving her diamond-studded hand. Security now. Some people really don't know their place. And in that instant, Ava knew this wasn't just humiliation. It was the first stone in an avalanche. The storm was already here. The security guard moved first. Miguel Torres, broad shoulders, dark suit, the kind of man hired not for subtlety but for strength. He stepped into the circle of silence, his hand already reaching toward Ava's arm. "Ma'am, you need to leave the deck." Gasps rippled through the crowd. A few phones lifted higher, recording. Isabella's smile widened, a queen certain of her stage. "Take her down the stairs. We don't tolerate imposters here." Ava didn't resist. Not yet. She stood still, shoulders poised, the emerald silk of her gown glowing against the last light of day. "All this," she murmured softly, "over a dress you don't approve of?" The line cut deeper than a shout. Melissa, the PR hostess, laughed too loudly, forcing the sound. "It's not about the dress, sweetheart. It's about access. This level isn't for outsiders." A hush fell heavier. The word outsiders carried a weight everyone understood, but no one wanted to name. From the corner, Sofia Ramirez whispered to her stream, voice trembling, "They're actually kicking her out. For looking too normal?" Hundreds of viewers poured into her live comments, the numbers climbing by the second. Miguel touched Ava's wrist lightly, testing her reaction. She didn't move. She let the contact hang in the air like an accusation. "Do it properly," Isabella commanded. "Escort her. Now." Two guests near the railing exchanged glances, uncomfortable. Ethan Brooks, the businessman in Navy, leaned forward, his voice low but audible. "She hasn't done anything wrong." Isabella's head snapped toward him, her tone coated in venom. "Stay out of this. Some standards matter. If we let anyone walk in, what's left of exclusivity?" The words struck Ava like déjà vu. She remembered 23, walking into a hotel in Atlanta, dressed in sweats after a red-eye flight. The clerk hadn't checked her name, hadn't looked at her card. He had simply said, "You don't look like someone who stays here." She had slept in her car that night. She had carried that sentence like a scar, turning it into fuel for every deal, every late night, every empire she built. Now here it was again, same script, different stage. She exhaled slowly, steady, letting the memory sharpen into resolve. "Your mistake," she said quietly, "is thinking you're the one in control." Isabella barked a laugh, loud and cruel. "Control? Honey, you're being thrown off a yacht in front of 200 guests. That's control." The band in the corner tried to restart, a saxophone trembling into the air, but the notes collapsed under the tension. No one danced. No one clapped. All eyes stayed locked on emerald against red. Miguel's grip tightened slightly. Guests shifted uneasily. Sophia's phone caught every angle. Ethan muttered again, "This is wrong." And Ava, still unmoving, still unflinching, whispered just loud enough for Isabella to hear, "You're not pushing me out. You're pushing yourself over the edge." For the first time, Isabella's smile faltered. The air wasn't warm anymore. It was charged. The glass shattered first. Melissa, her red lips curled in a smirk, plucked Ava's untouched wine from the table and tipped it over, spilling it across the teak floor. The golden liquid pooled like wasted sunlight. Then, with a flick of her hand, she let the crystal flute fall. It broke sharp, echoing louder than the music. "She doesn't even deserve a drink here," Melissa sneered, brushing her sequin sleeve as if Ava's presence were dirt. A ripple of uneasy laughter rolled through the crowd. But it wasn't joy. It was discomfort disguised as amusement. Guests shifted, eyes darting between Isabella's radiant red and Ava's silent emerald. Isabella stepped closer, her heels clicking like hammers. She leaned in, voice low enough for Ava, but sharp enough for the nearest 10 guests to hear. "You're not one of us. You never will be. And tonight, you'll remember how small you are." The words clung to the air, heavy, deliberate. Miguel tightened his grip on Ava's wrist, tugging her toward the stairs that led off the VIP deck. His touch wasn't violent yet, but it carried the weight of inevitability. Phones rose higher. Whispers became words. "She didn't do anything. This looks bad. Why are they pushing her?" Ethan Brooks finally stood, his chair scraping back against the deck. "This is a mistake," he said firmly. His voice carried further than he intended. "She's on the guest list. I saw the name." Isabella turned on him, her smile icy. "You'll lose your invitation if you keep talking." But the damage was done. Heads swiveled. Guests weren't just watching now, they were questioning. Sophia's live stream comments scrolled faster than her eyes could follow. "This is discrimination. She looks calm. Why are they attacking her? Don't let them touch her." And Ava? She still hadn't moved. Her silence was no longer read as weakness. It was starting to look like certainty. Melissa scoffed, snatching the small black clutch from Ava's hand. "Fake, like the rest of her," she declared, waving it for the crowd. She tried to open it, but Ava's gaze stopped her cold, steady, unflinching, a quiet warning. Isabella raised her hand toward Miguel again. "Enough. Get her out." That was the moment Ava finally spoke. Her voice calm, deliberate, impossible to ignore, careful. "The last time someone tried to erase me, I built an empire from the ashes. You might want to ask yourself what I'll build after tonight." The words landed heavy, reverberating through the golden deck. And for the first time all night, Isabella's smile looked brittle. The deck had gone still, a theater of tension. The sea lapped gently against the hull, but up here, every sound was magnified. The hiss of a champagne cork, the shuffle of uneasy shoes, the faint hum of Sophia's phone streaming to thousands. Ava finally moved, not with struggle, not with panic, just a slow, deliberate reach into the emerald folds of her gown. She retrieved her phone, sleek and black, a small object that suddenly carried the weight of command. Isabella scoffed. "Calling for a ride? Honey, Ubers don't pick up from private marinas." A few guests chuckled nervously, but Ava's voice, soft and razor-sharp, cut through their amusement. "Jordan," she said into the line, her tone calm as a heartbeat. "Activate Protocol 7. Record everything. Confirm board access." There was silence for a beat, then a clear, professional reply on speaker. "Protocol 7 active. Board members notified. Recording live." Gasps rippled across the deck. Isabella's smirk faltered. Melissa's hand twitched around the stolen clutch. Miguel looked uncertain, his grip loosening by instinct. "What is this?" Isabella snapped, her confidence cracking. "It's called accountability," Ava replied, eyes never leaving hers. Sophia nearly dropped her phone, whispering into her live stream. "Oh my God, did you hear that? She's connected to the board. This is big." Ethan's jaw tightened. He stepped closer, positioning himself between Ava and Miguel. "You should stop this," he told Isabella, "before you regret it." But Isabella doubled down, her cheeks flushed red against the crimson sequins. "Number, she's bluffing. If she had power, she wouldn't be standing here, dressed like that, waiting to be thrown out." The insult stung the air, but Ava didn't flinch. Instead, she let the silence work for her. She held Isabella's gaze until the woman looked away first. Then Ava lifted the phone again, speaking as though the crowd didn't exist. Confirm timestamp. Confirm witness recordings. Prepare for escalation. Confirmed. Jordan's voice echoed. The hush that followed was heavier than any scream. Guests weren't smirking anymore. They were staring at Ava, at Isabella, at the invisible shift happening in real time. For the first time, power no longer sparkled red under diamonds. It glowed steady and unstoppable in emerald green. The hush that gripped the deck was unlike anything before. Not fear, not awe, something sharper. A collective awareness that whatever was happening here was no longer just a spat at a yacht party, it was a moment about to detonate. Isabella broke first. "This is ridiculous," she spat, waving a manicured hand toward the guests. "She's a nobody trying to hijack an evening meant for real executives, real investors." But her voice didn't carry like before. It cracked at the edges. Ava lifted her phone again, her tone calm, precise. "Confirm live relay to shareholder servers." Jordan's reply was instant. "Confirmed. All feeds active." The words hit like a tidal wave. Gasps erupted. Guests pulled out their own phones, searching, checking, confirming. On Sophia's live stream, the comments were exploding. "She's wired into the boardroom. This is real. Who is she?" Ethan spoke louder this time, his voice steady, his posture defensive. "She's not bluffing. Look at her. She hasn't moved once. Do you really think someone faking could hold this long under your spotlight?" Melissa's hand shook, the stolen clutch slipping slightly. "Isabella," she whispered, panic rising. But Isabella forced a brittle smile, diamond teeth in fading light. "Boardroom or not, this is my event. My guest list. My rules." That was when Ava finally turned fully toward the crowd, her emerald gown catching the last blaze of sunset. Her voice was quiet, but it carried through the stillness like a bell. "Correction. This is my yacht. This event is under my company. And the contracts you all signed?" She paused, letting her words sink. "They run through me." It landed like thunder. The crowd rippled shock, whispers, disbelief tumbling over each other. Sophia's phone shook as she whispered into the mic. "She owns it. She owns the whole thing." Miguel stepped back instinctively, releasing Ava's wrist as though burned. Melissa's face went pale. Ethan nodded once, loud enough for others to hear. "I knew it." Isabella staggered half a step, her balance shaken more by truth than heels. "No," she whispered, her voice thin. "No, you're lying. If you owned this company..." Ava cut in, her words slicing clean. "If I owned this company, then ask yourself why the board is listening right now. Ask yourself why every contract you signed has my signature on it." She tapped her phone once, and Jordan's voice filled the deck again. Board acknowledgement confirmed. CEO Ava Johnson recognized. A collective gasp surged like wind. Guests stared, mouths open, hands frozen around flutes of champagne. Some clapped without meaning to. Others whispered, "She's the CEO. She's the owner." And in that moment, the balance shattered. The power that had glittered red in sequins dissolved, exposed as shallow spectacle. The real power stood calm, dressed in green, steady as the tide beneath them. Ava lowered her phone. Her voice was almost gentle, but unshakable. "You tried to throw me off my own yacht. Now tell me, where exactly do you belong?" The deck erupted not in music, not in laughter, but in something louder, the sound of truth crashing through pretense. For a heartbeat, the only sound was the sea brushing against the yacht's hull. Then the murmurs exploded like a storm. "She's the CEO? Wait, this whole event is hers? Oh my God, they tried to kick her off her own yacht." Phones shot up everywhere, a forest of glowing screens capturing Isabella's unraveling smile. Melissa's hand trembled, the stolen clutch slipping from her grip and clattering onto the deck. She scrambled to pick it up, her face pale, her voice stammering. I didn't know." Miguel, the security guard, took 2 careful steps back, palms raised as if distance could erase his role. "I was just following orders," he muttered, his baritone suddenly small. Isabella tried to laugh, but the sound cracked. "Everyone calm down, she's bluffing. This is a stunt. A publicity trick." But no one was laughing with her anymore. Not one. Sophia's live stream now had tens of thousands watching, comments flooding in. "She's the real CEO. Humiliation caught live. This is history." Ethan seized the moment, his voice cutting across the deck. "You humiliated her in front of all of us, tore her down for how she looked. And now, Turns out she built everything we're standing on. The words drew a ripple of applause, hesitant at first, then swelling, as more guests found their courage, clapping in defiance of the lie they had just witnessed. Isabella's face reddened beneath the glitter of her gown. She spun toward Melissa. "Say something. Tell them she's not." Melissa froze, caught between loyalty and survival. Her eyes darted to Ava, then to the recording phones, then back to Isabella. No words came. Ava didn't raise her voice. She didn't need to. She stepped into the center of the storm, her emerald dress glowing under the lantern light. "This company was built to set standards," she said softly. "What you've shown here tonight, that's the standard of prejudice, of arrogance, of failure." The crowd hushed, drawn into her gravity. Isabella's diamond necklace sparkled, but her power had already dimmed. "You can't, you wouldn't dare." Ava's gaze locked on her, calm, cold, absolute. "You're already finished." The deck erupted again, not in chaos, but in clarity. The tide had turned, and everyone could feel it. The applause faded into a tense, expectant silence. All eyes locked on Ava, emerald against crimson, calm against chaos. She raised her phone once more, her voice steady, unwavering. "Jordan, effective immediately terminate Isabella Marlowe, Melissa Hart, and Miguel Torres. Remove their access credentials, cancel all contracts signed under their authority." There was no hesitation on the other end. "Confirmed. Processing now." A beat later, the shift happened. Miguel's earpiece crackled, then went dead. He touched it in confusion, his brow furrowing. Melissa's tablet used for event management lit up red before shutting itself off, and Isabella's phone buzzed violently, then froze, the Horizon logo flashing before fading into a lock screen stamped, "Access revoked." Gasps filled the deck. Guests leaned forward, watching the collapse unfold in real time. Isabella stared at her frozen device like it had betrayed her. "No, no, this isn't happening." Her voice rose, shrill, desperate. "You can't do this to me." But Ava didn't move, didn't blink. She simply lowered her phone to her side. "I already have," Melissa tried to plead, her words tumbling. "Please, I was just following." Ava's gaze cut her off, sharp, final. "You chose compliance over conscience. That's a choice you'll live with." Miguel opened his mouth, but no sound came. He looked around the deck at the cameras, at the guests, at Sophia's live stream capturing every second, and knew his defense would never matter. The crowd stirred again, a mix of awe and vindication. Ethan spoke up, his voice firm. "This is justice. Not the kind in courtrooms, the kind that happens when the truth finally speaks." Phones were still raised. Applause began again, louder this time, not hesitant but full, carrying across the bay like thunder. Isabella stood trembling in her crimson gown, the diamonds on her neck glittering like shackles. Her empire had just evaporated, her power dissolved in the space of a sentence. And Ava, still calm, still silent, let the weight of the moment settle. She hadn't shouted, she hadn't begged, she had simply ended it. The storm was over, and she was the one left standing. For a long, heavy moment, no one spoke. Only the sea filled the silence, waves brushing against the yacht's hull like the soundtrack of justice itself. Then it began slow applause from the back of the deck. One guest, then another, until the entire crowd was clapping, some cheering outright, others shaking their heads in disbelief at what they had just witnessed. Sophia's live stream comments scrolled faster than her phone could display. "This is unreal. She didn't even raise her voice. Emerald Queen just ended them live." Melissa's mascara streaked as she tried to melt into the background, eyes darting for an exit. Miguel had already stepped away, shoulders slumped, the authority drained from his posture. And Isabella, still glittering in crimson sequins, stood trembling, her face twisted between rage and humiliation. "You," Isabella's voice cracked, desperate, clinging to anything left. "You can't just erase people like this." Ava turned her head slightly, her eyes steady, her tone colder than steel. "No, Isabella, you tried to erase me. Tonight was never about a party. It was about whether silence meant submission. You learned the truth." The crowd roared with approval, the applause sharp and electric. Ethan stepped forward, addressing the guests around him. "Remember this moment. We just watched a woman try to humiliate another in front of us all, only to find out the woman she targeted owned everything beneath our feet." More cheers followed. Even those who had laughed earlier now clapped loudly, trying to align themselves with justice. Isabella stumbled back, her voice breaking. "This isn't fair. I worked for this company, I made this gala happen. And you built it on arrogance? Ava replied, her voice cutting the night clean. Power isn't sequin gowns and diamond necklaces. Power is what remains when the sparkle fades. Tonight, yours faded fast. She let that hang in the air, the words echoing against the water. Guests lifted their glasses, some toasting her name. Sophia's camera zoomed closer, her voice trembling in awe. She didn't shout once. She didn't need to. That's real power. Isabella's knees buckled slightly, the reality crashing down. She wasn't the queen of the deck anymore, she was the cautionary tale. Ava stepped forward into the center of the crowd, the emerald gown glowing under the lanterns, calm as the tide. I don't need the footage, she said softly, her voice reaching every corner of the deck. Because I am the ending you can't edit. Phones caught it, guests gasped, and for a moment the entire yacht held its breath. The story was over, and Ava had written every line. The applause didn't stop. It rolled across the deck like thunder, louder than the band had ever played. Every glass raised, every camera pointed not at Isabella's glittering gown, but at the woman in emerald who hadn't raised her voice once. Isabella's hands shook as she tried to salvage her dignity. She straightened her shoulders, lifted her chin, but the tremor in her voice betrayed her. You're making a mistake, she shouted, the words quivering. This company needs me. These guests came for me. You'll regret this. The crowd answered for Ava, a chorus of boos. Shouts of, we came for her, and you don't belong here, rang louder than Isabella's desperate cry. Melissa tried to tug at Isabella's arm, whispering, we should leave. But Isabella yanked free, red sequins catching the light like broken glass. No, this is my event. Mine. Ava didn't even turn toward her. She simply stepped closer to the railing, the bay's golden water reflecting against her gown. Calm, still, in command. Sophia's live stream had doubled again, her voice trembling as she narrated. They're booing Isabella. The crowd is protecting Ava. I've never seen a room turn this fast. Miguel retreated farther into the shadows, pulling the earpiece from his ear and tossing it onto a table. He knew it was over. He wouldn't even try to explain. Not tonight. Ethan lifted his glass and called out over the noise. To Ava Johnson, the only reason this company even exists. The guests erupted again, clinking glasses, raising cheers that filled the night sky. Ava finally turned, meeting Isabella's bloodshot eyes. For a moment, silence cut through the celebration. Two women, crimson and emerald, face to face one last time. You thought sequins and titles made you untouchable, Ava said quietly, her words sharp enough to cut air. But tonight you learned real power doesn't need a spotlight. It makes its own. Isabella's lips parted, searching for a reply, but none came. Her empire had evaporated, her allies had fled, and her stage, once hers alone, now belonged entirely to the woman she had tried to erase. The guests began chanting Ava's name, once, twice, then rising into a rhythm that echoed against the waves. Ava, 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 and Ava stood at the center, not triumphant, not boastful, but steady. The storm had passed, the judgment delivered, emerald against crimson, calm against chaos. The night was hers, the company was hers, the story was hers, and there was nothing left for Isabella but silence. The chant carried like a tide, Ava, Ava, Ava. It swelled until the music was irrelevant, until even the hum of the bay seemed to echo her name. Isabella staggered back a step, her crimson gown trembling with every shallow breath. She turned, eyes darting from face to face, but found no ally. Melissa had already slipped toward the edge of the deck, avoiding eye contact. Miguel stood stiff against the rail, no longer her guard, no longer her shield. This isn't over, Isabella hissed, but her words rang hollow, swallowed by applause. Ava lifted her hand once, and the crowd quieted, as if the entire yacht waited for her next move. Her voice carried clear. This event was meant to celebrate progress, not prejudice. Tonight, you saw what arrogance builds, and tonight, you saw it collapse. Guests murmured in agreement. Some clapped again. Others lifted their glasses higher, toasting in unison. Sophia's phone trembled in her hand as she whispered to her stream, "She's not just the CEO, she's rewriting the whole story right here, live." Two security staff, no longer Miguel's, approached Isabella. Their tone was neutral, professional, final. "Ma'am, it's time to leave." Gasps rippled again. Isabella tried to pull free, but the fight was gone. She cast one last desperate look at the crowd, but they had already turned, lifting their glasses toward Ava instead. Her voice cracked as she was led toward the gangway. "You'll regret this, all of you." No one answered. No one followed. The sight of red sequins retreating into the shadows was the last reminder of the power she once pretended to hold. And when the gangway shut behind her, the deck erupted one final time, cheers, applause, voices calling Ava's name. She stood still, emerald gown gleaming beneath the lanterns, face calm but resolute. The storm had ended exactly where it began, on her terms. The night belonged to Ava, and nothing, not crimson sequins, not broken diamonds, not hollow threats could take it back. When the gangway clanged shut behind Isabella, the air shifted again. Relief, vindication, triumph all woven into the hum of a deck now firmly under Ava's command. She lifted her phone one last time. The guests hushed, as if the bay itself leaned closer to hear. "Jordan," she said, her voice calm as ever. "Finalize termination files for Isabella Marlowe, Melissa Hart, and Miguel Torres. Strip all access to Horizon assets, effective immediately. Freeze any pending payments connected to tonight's gala. Log everything for legal audit." The reply was crisp, undeniable. "Confirmed. All accounts frozen. Credentials revoked. Incident logged under your authority." Screens around the deck lit up as staff phones, tablets, and earpieces buzzed red, signaling the purge. A collective gasp followed. Melissa dropped her glass, shattering it across the deck before she was quietly escorted away. Miguel, shoulders slumped, simply nodded once, accepting the judgment. The crowd murmured in awe. One guest whispered, "I've never seen power handled so quietly." Another replied, "That's because real power doesn't scream, it doesn't need to." Sophia's live stream audience had surged into six figures. Comments poured in like a flood. Contracts gone in seconds. She ended careers live, emerald over crimson forever. Ava lowered her phone, the order complete. The weight of finality hanging in the warm Miami night. She didn't need to gloat. She didn't need to explain. The silence after her words carried more weight than Isabella's shouting ever had. Ethan raised his glass again, his voice ringing clear. "To Ava Johnson, not just CEO, but justice, personified." Applause thundered once more, rolling across the deck, echoing over Biscayne Bay. Guests clinked glasses, some chanting her name again, others whispering to one another in reverence. Ava turned slowly, her gaze sweeping the faces around her. Some were ashamed, remembering how they had laughed at Isabella's cruelty. Others were proud, relieved to have witnessed the fall of arrogance. All of them, without exception, now stood on her side. She spoke again, her tone softer now but no less commanding. "Tonight will not be remembered for glitter or music. Tonight will be remembered because arrogance met consequence, and because silence was mistaken for weakness." The words hung in the air, etched into the night like scripture, and then she stepped back into the glow of the lanterns, emerald shimmering steady against the golden water, her authority no longer hidden, revealed, unshakable, absolute. The music didn't return right away. The band stood frozen, horns and strings in hand, as if they too had been witnesses rather than performers. The real song of the evening had already been played, the slow rise of injustice, the crashing chorus of humiliation, and the final steady note of truth. Ava stood at the center of it all, emerald dress shimmering under lantern light, her presence heavier than the sea itself. The guests pressed closer, not out of obligation, but out of reverence. No one looked at the empty space Isabella left behind. That space no longer mattered. Ethan raised his glass one last time, quieter now, solemn. "To dignity," he said, his eyes meeting Ava's. "To power that doesn't need to shout." Glasses lifted across the deck, the toast echoing softly into the Miami night. Sophia whispered into her phone, live stream still rolling. "I don't think I'll ever forget this." She didn't scream. She didn't fight. She just ended it. Ava finally spoke again, her voice measured, every word deliberate. "I built this company on the belief that every person deserves to belong where excellence is the only standard. Tonight reminded me why that mission matters. Because prejudice hides in plain sight, in jokes, in smirks, in red sequins." The guests listened as if the night itself demanded silence. "I was told at 23, she continued, her gaze drifting toward the bay, that I didn't look like someone who belonged in a five-star hotel. At 26, that I didn't look like someone who belonged in a boardroom. And tonight, that I didn't look like someone who belonged on my own yacht. She paused, letting the weight of memory hang heavy. Every time, I turned those words into fuel. And tonight, that fuel ended an empire of arrogance. The deck erupted in applause again. Not wild this time, but deep, steady, almost reverent. Ava looked back toward the crowd, her eyes calm, her voice lowering into the final words they would all remember. Remember this: silence is not weakness. Patience is not surrender. And power, real power, doesn't sparkle. It endures. The line landed like scripture, a closing note carved into every heart present. Phones caught it, streams carried it, but it wasn't the cameras that mattered. It was the witnesses, the people who would leave this yacht different than they arrived. The band struck a single, quiet chord. The lanterns swayed gently with the sea breeze. And Ava Johnson, young black CEO, stood tall at the center of it all, no longer hidden, no longer doubted, but immortalized in emerald light. The story was finished. The legacy had just begun.